About this and more, we have Paul Rieckhoff here in New York with us. You know, Paul, he's the host of the Independent Americans podcast, founder and CEO, Independent Veterans of America. Good to see you, my friend.
Good to see you.
That's the question sometimes. I think it's interesting to look at data because these are the people, they're your people, these independent swing voters, who they are. They're a little more focused on the economy than other issues. I know it's number one issue, but even more so for them.
I think the big takeaway is that independents, unaffiliated, uncommitteds are the future, right? A lot of them are young people. They are overwhelmingly male. The majority are white. And 60% of young people are independent and unaffiliated. So they're more discriminating. They're still learning. And a lot of these are also conservative voters that the Republican Party would have gotten in the past. Many people don't feel like Trump is a true conservative. I think you're seeing some of that reflected there. But they're also 18% of the overall voting population, which is sizable, especially in swing states. They care about the economy. They care about inflation. One thing that wasn't listed in there that I think falls into the breaking news right now, they also care about safety. They care about crime. They care about local safety. And that's an issue that I think is going to continue to ripple throughout the election, especially if we have more school shootings.
Two things on that. There's Kamala Harris live. She just wrapped up in New Hampshire. I want to talk about the shooting in Georgia in a moment, as she did at the beginning of her remarks. Her remarks, though, were focused on economic issues, small business issues in particular. So I was saying to our guests who were on before you, I don't know if it sounded Republican, but it certainly sounded moderate, which is a little bit different than sometimes what we hear on the economy from Kamala Harris. What'd you make of it?
100%. I think that's reflective of what we also heard at the Democratic Convention. They sounded a lot more moderate than they've sounded in the past, especially when they're talking about things like tax cuts. They were talking about a robust, strong military. These are moderate positions that resonate with independents, especially in swing states. You heard her talk about fracking in Pennsylvania. That's a big change in her position. So I think overall, you're seeing her and the party move to the middle. I think Tim Walz and picking him as vice president is also a reflection of that. They want to get to those undecided. They want to get to male, moderates, and key swing states because that's where the battleground is.
Okay, on safety, I just thought of this before I go to Georgia. What we're watching now is interesting. It's an outdoor rally that just wrapped up for the vice president. They had, I believe, the bulletproof protected glass around the stage, but I noticed she's doing a rope line here, which is interesting, right, after what we saw in Pennsylvania this summer with former President Trump. So that, I think, is worth pointing out. Georgia. You brought it up, the school shooting. The vice president talked about it a little bit. With these voters, think about it from a political perspective. Some people say, well, that's callous, but that's the situation that we're in here in a state like Georgia that's literally probably tied or just about. You have a news story like this today. What about the people that see this and think about gun control or think about the safety of their children? What do you make of this?
I think today is a really good example of how tight this election is and how ripe it is for disruption. You can have school shootings, you can have international incidents, you could have hurricanes and major weather events, and they're going to look to the president and the presidential candidate to respond. Who's going to be strong? Who can take this on? Who can make me feel safe? Right now in Georgia, they're going to want to hear from Trump and Harris, what are you going to do about school shootings? And I think most Americans have been dissatisfied and frustrated with both parties. It looks like neither one of them can solve this issue. So this is a defining day in a defining time when each presidential candidate will have an opportunity to say to Georgians, here's how I will keep you safe. And I think that's an undercurrent that's going to continue throughout this election where more breaking news will happen. Every day we're going to wake up to a new crisis or a new trauma, and we're going to see how our president and presidential candidates respond.
Well, that's the test of running for president, right? Sometimes we talk about all these policies that you're going to roll out, and they used to say the 3 a.m. phone call. But the point is, the job's making decisions. The job's making calls. If it gets to your desk, it's big enough that you have to make a call on it. So the debate, you're right, next Tuesday night will be kind of a gauge of that, especially for Kamala Harris. To me, it's like, all right, can we imagine this person in the Oval Office making those decisions? Is she fit? Is she ready? That's what
I think that's right. The old question was, which presidential candidate do you want to have a beer with?
I know.
I think those were in simpler, more peaceful times. Right now, who do you want to be your commander-in-chief? Who do you want to keep your children safe? Who do you want to keep your nation, your community, your school safe? And I think that's ultimately going to be the gut test that's going to move independents in the next couple of weeks. 18%. That's what they're fighting over. 18% of the country. Right. They're looking for a president they can trust that will make them and their family feel safe.
By the way, it's hard to believe it's that high, the number. I don't know. I mean, I would think a lot of those people are already leaning one direction or the other. But it's Trump, right? Trump is, we know exactly what we're dealing with because he's run for president twice and he's been president. So to me, the pressure is on Harris to answer those questions. If she answers those questions, I don't know if that it's simple to say she wins, but she has a pretty good chance at winning. If she doesn't, then people say, oh, you know what? I know what I'm getting with Trump, and maybe the economy's better off, and they go back to him.
Well, we also got to see if Trump can prevent unforced errors. I mean, the Arlington debacle has become like a week-long story. That could have been long since passed, but it keeps coming up, and it keeps evolving. And if you want to attract independents in places like Pennsylvania and Georgia, getting into a controversy around Arlington National Cemetery and getting into a PR war with the Army is probably not a good way to do it. And I think those things are stacking up. You saw John McCain's son come out this week.
I saw that.
Those move independent voters over time. And the national defense, veterans community, the safety community, first responders, cops, firefighters, those are the kind of people who respond to these kinds of issues. And when Trump keeps doubling down, I think it's hurting him over time.
It's a Georgia issue, all right? You got a lot of military votes there, and Arizona probably as well. I mean, the Jimmy McCain comments, that's as close as it can be in Arizona.
Yeah,
so.
Trump's numbers look good in Arizona right now, but we'll see how that pans out over time. Jimmy McCain is a name that resonates in Arizona. That's still a dogfight for Senate as well between Gallego and Kerry Lake, and that's a battleground state to watch.
Thank you, my friend. We'll see you again
sir.
next week, hopefully. Paul Rykoff with us. The situation in Georgia, we're keeping an eye on it. We're going to go back there and get an update from officials at the top of the hour. They're supposed to have a press conference on the update on the school shooting. A live report from the scene, though. Elizabeth Pran's coming up next as they set up for that news conference. We'll be right back.